The custodian stole one fruit for the crying heir. The queen watched and whispered, "Execute him." The stars shone like tiny jewels in the night sky above the royal palace of Kayonsa. The palace stood tall and proud, its white walls gleaming under the light of 3 moons. Inside these walls lived the most powerful family in the galaxy. They ruled over a vast empire that spanned hundreds of planets. June walked slowly through the royal gardens, a large basket hanging from his arm. He was a custodian, a simple man who took care of the gardens. For 15 years he had worked here, tending to plants from all across the galaxy. His hands were rough from years of work, but they moved with care as he touched each leaf and flower. The gardens were quiet at this late hour. Most palace workers had gone to sleep. Only the night guards remained awake, standing at their posts with straight backs and watchful eyes. They paid little attention to June. He was just a gardener after all, not someone important. June liked the peace of the night. During the day, the gardens filled with nobles and officials who came to admire the rare plants. They walked on paths that June had swept clean. They touched flowers that June had helped grow. But they never saw him. To them, he was invisible. Tonight, June had to check on the most precious plant in the garden, the shimmer tree. There was only one such tree in the entire empire. It grew fruits that glowed with a soft blue light. These fruits were said to have magical powers. They could heal the sick and make people live longer, but only the royal family was allowed to eat them. As June approached the shimmer tree, he noticed something different. A single fruit hung from a low branch. It was perfectly ripe, its skin shining like the surface of a calm lake. June had never seen one so beautiful. In all his years working in the garden, he had only seen 3 shimmer fruits grow to ripeness. Each time, the queen had ordered the fruit to be picked for a special ceremony. The shimmer tree stood in the center of a small clearing. Around it, a thin fence made of silver wire marked the boundary that common people could not cross. Only the queen, king, and their children were allowed inside this circle. June had special permission to enter, but only to care for the tree. He stepped carefully over the silver wire and approached the tree. His job was to check that the tree was healthy, that no insects or diseases threatened it. The bark felt smooth under his fingers like polished wood. The leaves were a deep green with edges that seemed to glow slightly in the dark. The single fruit hung just above his head. Its light cast blue shadows on his face as he looked up at it. June knew he should not touch it. The punishment for stealing royal property was death. As he turned to leave, a sound caught his attention. It was faint at first, almost lost in the gentle rustle of leaves. But as June stood still and listened, he recognized it. Someone was crying. The sound came from the palace. June followed the path that led from the garden to the royal residence. The crying grew louder as he approached a balcony on the 2nd floor. It was the private balcony of Prince Tay, the 7-year-old son of Queen Hana. June had seen the young prince many times from a distance. The boy often came to the gardens to play or read. He was a quiet child, serious beyond his years. But June had never heard him cry like this before. Climbing up a maintenance ladder that the palace workers used, June peeked over the edge of the balcony. What he saw made his heart ache. Prince Tay sat alone on a small chair, his small body shaking with sobs. His face was pale, almost white in the moonlight. Even from this distance, June could see that something was very wrong. The prince looked sick, very sick. Rumors had spread among the palace staff. The young prince had fallen ill 3 months ago. At first it seemed like a common cold, but he did not get better. Instead, he grew weaker day by day. The best doctors in the empire came to see him. They brought advanced machines and powerful medicines. Nothing helped. June watched as Prince Tay wiped his eyes with small hands that seemed too thin, too fragile. Then the boy looked up at the night sky and whispered something. Though June could not hear the words, he understood. It was a prayer. The prince was asking the stars for help, for a miracle to make him well again. At that moment, the door to the balcony opened. Queen Hana stepped outside. Even in the middle of the night, she looked regal. Her long black hair was perfectly arranged. Her face showed no emotion as she approached her son. She placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. Prince Tay tried to stop crying, to sit up straight and be strong as a prince should be. But he was too weak. "Mother," the prince said in a voice that was barely audible, "will I die?" The queen did not answer right away. She looked out at the garden, her eyes passing over the place where June hid in the shadows. For a terrible moment, June thought she had seen him, but her gaze moved on. "The doctors are doing everything they can," she finally said. Her voice was calm and controlled as always, but June thought he heard something else there too. Fear, perhaps, or sadness that she tried to hide. "It hurts," Prince Tay whispered, "all the time now." The queen knelt beside her son, something June had never seen her do before. Queens did not kneel, even to comfort their children. But she did now, taking the boy's small hands in hers. "You must be strong," she said. "You are the heir to the Cheonsa Empire. One day you will rule over billions of people. They will look to you for strength and wisdom. But what if I'm not here?" the prince asked. "What if I can't get better?" Again the queen was silent. In that silence, June saw the truth. The doctors had given up. The prince was dying, and nothing in their advanced science could save him. "Rest now," the queen said at last. She helped Prince Tay to his feet and led him inside. The balcony door closed behind them, leaving June alone in the night. He climbed down the ladder, his mind troubled. The image of the sick prince stayed with him as he returned to the garden. The boy was so young, with his whole life ahead of him. It wasn't fair that he should suffer like this. It wasn't right. June found himself standing before the shimmer tree again. The single fruit glowed above him, seeming brighter now in the deepening night. He remembered the old stories about the fruit, that it could cure any illness, that it could bring strength back to the weak, that it could even save those at death's door. These were just stories, of course. Myths told by common people who had never tasted the rare fruit. But what if they were true? What if the fruit really could help the prince? The thought took root in June's mind and would not leave. He looked around. The garden was empty. The night guards were at their post near the palace gates, far from this inner sanctum. No one would see if he took the fruit, but the punishment for such a crime was clear: death. No exceptions, no mercy. Queen Hana was known for her strict adherence to the laws of the empire. She would not spare him just because he had meant well. June stepped back from the tree. He should return to his small room in the workers' quarters. He should forget what he had seen and heard tonight. It was not his place to interfere in royal matters, yet as he walked away, the sound of the prince's crying echoed in his memory. The boy had asked the stars for a miracle. Perhaps the stars had sent June instead. He stopped and looked back at the shimmer tree. Its branches swayed gently in a breeze that carried the sweet scent of night-blooming flowers. The single fruit seemed to pulse with light, calling to him. In that moment, June made his decision. If there was even a small chance that the fruit could help Prince Tay, then the risk was worth taking. He would rather die trying to save an innocent child than live knowing he had done nothing. What June did not know was that he was being watched. High in the central tower of the palace, in a room filled with screens and monitors, Queen Hana sat alone. Before her, dozens of screens showed different parts of the palace and grounds. One of them showed the royal garden, the shimmer tree, and a custodian who stood looking up at a glowing fruit with an expression of deep thought on his face. The queen leaned forward, her eyes narrowing as she watched June return to the tree. She had always prided herself on understanding people, on being able to predict what they would do, but she could not predict what this simple gardener would do next, and that both troubled and intrigued her. She reached for a communication device, ready to alert the guards. Then she paused. Something told her to wait, to watch, to see what this man would choose to do when he thought no one was looking. In the garden, unaware of the queen's attention, June made the most important decision of his life. The custodian stole one fruit for the crying heir. The queen watched and whispered, "Execute him." June looked at the shimmer fruit one last time. Its blue glow painted his face in soft light. He knew what he was about to do would likely cost him his life, but when he thought of Prince Tay's pale face and pained eyes, he knew he had no choice. With a quick movement, June reached up and picked the fruit. It came away from the branch with a soft snap. For a moment he half expected alarms to sound or guards to appear, but the garden remained quiet. Only the night insects continued their songs, unaware that June had just committed a crime punishable by death. The fruit felt warm in his hand, almost alive. Its surface rippled with colors like oil on water. Blue, purple, and green lights danced across its skin. June had never held anything so beautiful or so dangerous. He quickly tucked the fruit inside his jacket close to his heart. Even through the fabric, he could see its glow. He would need to be careful. If anyone saw that light, they would know what he had done. June looked around one more time. The garden paths were empty. The night guards stood at their post far away near the palace walls. No one had seen him, or so he thought. High in her monitoring room, Queen Hana watched the theft on her screens. Her hand hovered over the alarm button. With one touch, she could send guards rushing to arrest the custodian. But something held her back. Curiosity, perhaps, or maybe something deeper. Track him, she said quietly to the palace computer system. But do not interfere. I wish to see what he intends to do. The computer acknowledged her command with a soft beep. On the screens, small red dots appeared, tracking June's movement through the garden. Unaware that he was being watched, June hurried along paths he had walked thousands of times. He knew every turn, every hidden corner of the royal gardens. He had worked here for 15 years, caring for plants that were worth more than he would earn in several lifetimes. The palace rose before him, its white walls gleaming under the 3 moons. June had never entered through the main doors. Those were for the royal family and high officials. Workers like him used side entrances and service corridors. Tonight, however, June needed to enter the main palace. Prince Tay's rooms were in the royal wing, far from the areas where workers were allowed. Getting there would not be easy. June approached a small door half hidden by climbing vines. It led to a storage room where garden tools were kept. From there, a narrow corridor connected to the palace kitchens. At this late hour, the kitchens would be nearly empty. Only a few workers would be preparing bread and other foods for the morning meal. He slipped through the door and moved quickly past shelves stacked with garden tools. The corridor beyond was dark, but June knew the way. He had taken this route many times when delivering fresh herbs for the palace cooks. The kitchen was warm and smelled of bread baking in large ovens. 2 young workers knelt by one oven, removing loaves that would be served at breakfast. They glanced up as June entered but soon returned to their task. They knew him as the garden man who brought herbs and vegetables. June nodded to them and walked purposefully across the kitchen, as if he had been sent on an errand. People rarely questioned someone who looked like they knew where they were going. Beyond the kitchen lay a series of hallways that connected different parts of the palace. During the day, these halls were busy with servants, officials, and guards. At night, they were nearly empty. June moved carefully, pausing at each corner to check that the way was clear. The fruit inside his jacket seemed to grow warmer. Its glow was visible now, a blue light that seeped through the fabric. He placed a hand over it, trying to hide the light. As he turned a corner, June came face to face with a guard. The man wore the silver uniform of the palace security force. His hand rested on the weapon at his belt. "You there?" the guard said, frowning. "What are you doing in this area at this hour?" June's heart raced. He had prepared no excuse for being here. The truth was impossible to speak. Any lie might be easily discovered. "I was asked to check some plants in the royal wing," June said, trying to keep his voice steady. "There may be signs of leaf rot." The guard's frown deepened. "Plants at this hour?" "The queen is very particular about her plants," June said. This at least was true. Queen Hana often inspected the gardens herself, pointing out the smallest flaws. The guard hesitated. Then his eyes narrowed as he noticed the blue glow coming from June's jacket. "What is that light?" he asked, taking a step closer. His hand tightened on his weapon. June stepped back. He could run, but he wouldn't get far. The guard would raise the alarm, and within minutes the entire palace would be searching for him. Just as the guard opened his mouth to speak again, a voice called from down the hallway. "Officer Min, you're needed at the east gate immediately." Both June and the guard turned to see a woman approaching. She wore the uniform of a high-ranking palace official. Her face was stern, her walk brisk and confident. The guard straightened, saluting her. "Yes, Director Song, right away." He gave June one last suspicious look, then hurried away in the direction of the east gate. June stood frozen, uncertain what to do next. The woman, Director Song, looked at him with sharp eyes. "You are taking a great risk, garden man," she said quietly. June's blood turned cold. She knew. Somehow she knew what he had done. Now she would call the guards, and his attempt to help Prince Tay would end before it began. But Director Song did not raise her voice or call for help. Instead, she looked up and down the hallway, making sure they were alone. "The prince's rooms are on the third floor, east wing," she said in a low voice. "There is a service stairway behind the blue tapestry at the end of this hall. It will take you close to his rooms. The guard outside his door changes at midnight. There will be a 2-minute gap when no one is watching." June stared at her in confusion. Why was she helping him? Was this a trap? As if reading his thoughts, Director Song said, "I have served the royal family for 25 years. I held Prince Tae on the day he was born. I will not stand by and watch him die if there is even a small chance to save him." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device. "This is my security badge. It will open most doors in the palace. Return it to the blue vase in the east garden when you are done." June took the badge with trembling hands. "Why aren't you taking the fruit to him yourself?" Director Song's face showed a flash of fear, quickly hidden. "I cannot. The queen watches me too closely. But you are invisible to most eyes here." A gardener. "No one important." She stepped back. "I must go before I am missed. You have until midnight. Do what you came to do, then leave the palace immediately." With those words, she turned and walked quickly away, leaving June alone in the hallway. In her monitoring room, Queen Hana watched this exchange with interest. Director Song had been with the royal family for many years. She was loyal and efficient. The queen had never had reason to doubt her, until now. "Continue tracking the Custodian," she ordered the computer, "and add Director Song to the surveillance list." The computer acknowledged the command. On the screens, a second red dot appeared, following Director Song as she moved through the palace. June found the blue tapestry where Director Song had said it would be. Behind it, a narrow door led to a spiral staircase. The stairs were dusty and looked rarely used. They were meant for servants who needed to move quickly between floors without being seen by important visitors. He climbed quickly, the shimmer fruit warm against his chest. On the third floor, the door opened onto a quiet hallway lined with paintings of past rulers. At the far end, 2 large doors marked the entrance to the royal wing. June checked the time on a clock mounted on the wall. 11:55. 5 minutes until the guard change. He would have to wait. He pressed himself into a shadowed alcove behind a large statue. From here he could see the doors but was unlikely to be spotted by anyone passing by. The minutes passed slowly. June's heart pounded so loudly he was sure anyone nearby would hear it. The fruit seemed to pulse in time with his heartbeat, its glow growing brighter then dimmer in a steady rhythm. At exactly midnight, the guard outside the royal door straightened as another guard approached from the opposite end of the hall. They exchanged brief words, then the first guard nodded and walked away. But the second guard did not immediately take up position. Instead, he walked a short distance away to speak to someone out of June's sight. This was the gap Director Song had mentioned. June moved quickly, using the security badge to unlock a smaller side door near the main entrance. He slipped through, finding himself in a large sitting room. The room was dark, lit only by the soft glow of night lights along the floor. Beyond this room lay several doors. June had no idea which one led to Prince Tae's bedroom. He would have to check each one, risking discovery with every moment he spent here. The first door opened onto an empty study. The second led to a bathroom. At the third door, June paused. He heard soft sounds from within, the quiet breathing of someone asleep or trying to sleep. Taking a deep breath, June opened the door just enough to peek inside. The room beyond was large, with a high ceiling painted to look like the night sky. Stars and planets moved slowly across this artificial sky, casting shifting patterns of light on the floor below. The custodian stole one fruit for the crying heir. The queen watched and whispered, "Execute him." The guards marched June through the palace hallways. His hands were bound in front of him with energy restraints, thin bands of light that were stronger than any metal. He did not struggle. There was no point. People stopped to stare as the group passed. A prisoner being led through the royal palace was an unusual sight. Some recognized June as the gardener who had worked in the royal gardens for many years. They whispered to each other, wondering what crime he had committed to deserve such treatment. June kept his eyes on the floor. He had known the risk when he took the shimmer fruit. He had accepted that he might die. But now that the moment had come, he found himself afraid, not of death itself, but of leaving his work unfinished. Who would care for the rare flowers in the north garden? Who would prune the ancient trees that needed such careful attention? These small concerns seemed strange even to him. A man facing death should have bigger worries. Yet June had lived a simple life, and his thoughts remained simple even now. The guards took him to a small room near the throne room. It was a waiting area for people who would soon see the queen. The room had no windows and only one door. 2 guards remained inside with June while the others left to inform the queen of his capture. Time passed slowly. June sat on a hard bench, the energy restraints humming softly around his wrists. The guards stood by the door watching him but saying nothing. They were just doing their job, following orders. June did not blame them. Finally, the door opened. Commander Ho entered, his face stern. "The queen will see you now," he said. The guards pulled June to his feet and led him through the door. Beyond lay the throne room of the Cheonsa Empire, the center of power for hundreds of worlds. The room was vast, with a ceiling so high that it seemed to disappear into shadows. Columns of black stone rose from the floor, each carved with the history of a different world in the empire. The floor was made of white marble that reflected the light from crystal chandeliers hanging above. At the far end of the room, on a raised platform, stood the stellar throne. It was made from a rare metal that glowed with its own inner light. Stars and galaxies seemed to move within the metal, giving the impression that the person who sat upon it controlled the very universe. Queen Hana sat on this throne. She wore formal robes of deep blue, the color of authority in the empire. Her black hair was arranged in an elaborate style, held in place by a crown of silver and blue gems. Her face showed no emotion as June was brought before her. The guards forced June to kneel at the foot of the platform. Commander Ho stood to one side, while other officials and nobles lined the walls of the room. They had gathered quickly, word having spread of the gardener who stole from the royal family. "Custodian June," the queen said. Her voice was clear and cold, carrying easily across the large room. "You have served in the royal gardens for 15 years. "Yes, Your Majesty," June replied softly. "In all that time, your work has been satisfactory. You have shown skill and dedication to your duties." June kept his eyes on the floor. Was she praising him before ordering his execution? It seemed a strange kindness. "Yet tonight," the queen continued, "you committed multiple serious crimes. You stole a shimmer fruit from the royal garden. You entered the royal wing without permission. You approached the crown prince without authorization." Each crime she listed seemed to hang in the air, heavy and undeniable. June did not try to deny them. He had done these things. The only question was why, and he doubted the queen cared about his reasons. To his surprise, she asked exactly that. "Explain your actions," Queen Hana commanded. June raised his head slowly, looking at the queen for the first time. Her face remained impassive, giving no hint of her thoughts. "I saw the prince on his balcony," June said, his voice growing stronger as he spoke. "He was crying. He looked very sick. I heard the rumors that the doctors could not help him." The queen's expression did not change, but June thought he saw something flicker in her eyes. "I remembered the stories about the shimmer fruit," he continued, "that it can heal any illness, that it can save lives. I hoped it might help Prince Tay." "So you stole it," the queen said. "You took what was not yours to take." "Yes, Your Majesty." "You knew the punishment for such actions?" June nodded. "Death. Yet you did it anyway," the queen said. It was not a question, but June answered. "The prince is just a child," he said simply. "He deserves to live his life, to grow up, to see the flowers bloom in spring and the stars shine at night. If there was any chance the fruit could help him, how could I not try?" A murmur ran through the watching nobles. Some looked shocked at June's boldness. Others seemed moved by his words. The queen silenced them with a single raised hand. "My son's health is not your concern," she said coldly. "The royal family has physicians, advisors, and protectors. We do not need gardeners making decisions about matters beyond their understanding." June lowered his eyes again. "I meant no disrespect, Your Majesty. I only wanted to help." The throne room doors opened suddenly. Everyone turned to look as a small figure entered. Prince Tay walked slowly but steadily down the long room. He was dressed in simple sleeping clothes, not the formal attire expected in the throne room. But no one dared comment on this breach of protocol. The prince looked different from just an hour ago. His face had color, his eyes were clear and bright. He walked without the weakness that had troubled him for months. The shimmer fruit had indeed worked its magic. Commander Ho stepped forward as if to intercept the prince, but Queen Hana raised her hand again, stopping him. She watched silently as her son approached the throne. Prince Tay stopped beside June, who remained kneeling on the hard floor. "Mother," the prince said, his voice stronger than it had been in months, "this man helped me." The queen's face softened slightly as she looked at her son. "You should be resting, Tay." "I feel better than I have in a long time," the prince said. "Because of him." He pointed to June. "He broke the law," the queen said. "He stole royal property." "He saved my life," Prince Tay replied. Despite his young age, he spoke clearly and with purpose. "The doctor said I wouldn't live to see the next full moons. But now I feel strong again." To demonstrate, the prince raised his arms and turned in a small circle. The movement was simple but would have been impossible for him earlier that day. Queen Hana watched her son with an unreadable expression. Then her eyes moved to June. "The law must be upheld," she said. "Without law there is chaos. Without rules our empire would fall into disorder." Prince Tay took a step closer to the throne. "Then change the law, mother. You are the queen. You make the laws." The queen almost smiled at her son's simple logic. "It is not so easy, Tay. Laws must be fair and apply to everyone. If I let this man go unpunished because his crime benefited you, what message does that send to our people? That some can break the law if they have good intentions?" The prince frowned, thinking hard. He was young, but as the heir to the empire, he had already begun learning about governance and justice. "Then punish him," Prince Tay said finally, "but not with death. He did wrong, but he also did good." The queen considered her son's words. The room was silent as everyone waited for her decision. The lives of billions across the galaxy might depend on her judgment in matters of galactic importance, but at this moment, her decision about one gardener seemed just as weighty. "Custodian June," she said at last, "you have committed crimes against the royal family and the empire. Do you deny this?" "No, Your Majesty," June replied. "Do you regret your actions?" June hesitated. The truthful answer might anger the queen, but he could not lie. "Not now. I regret breaking the law," he said carefully. "I regret disappointing you after years of service. But I do not regret helping Prince Tay. If faced with the same choice again, I would make the same decision." Another murmur ran through the watching crowd. Such honesty before the queen was rare and dangerous. Queen Hana's expression remained calm, but something changed in her eyes. Was it respect? Or anger at his defiance? June could not tell. "I have made my decision," the queen announced. The room grew even quieter. Prince Tay moved closer to June as if wanting to protect him. The boy's small gesture of support meant more to June than he could express. The queen rose from the stellar throne. Standing, she seemed taller, more imposing. Her voice, when she spoke, filled the vast room. "Custodian June, for the crime of theft of royal property, for unauthorized entry into the royal wing, and for approaching the crown prince without permission, you are sentenced to—" She paused, looking directly at June. In that moment, he was certain she would say death. He closed his eyes, accepting his fate. "Life service to the crown prince," the queen finished. June's eyes snapped open in surprise. The crowd broke into shocked whispers. Even Commander Ho looked startled. "You will no longer work in the gardens," the queen continued. "From this day forward, you will serve as Prince Tay's personal assistant and teacher of botany. You will attend him daily, teaching him about the plants of our empire and beyond. You will help him create his own garden on the East Terrace, where he can learn to care for growing things as part of his recovery." She stepped down from the platform, approaching June and her son. Up close, her face seemed less severe, more human. Or the custodian stole one fruit for the crying heir, the queen watched, and whispered, "Execute him." 6 months passed since the night June stole the shimmer fruit. Spring had come to the royal palace, bringing new growth to the gardens and renewed health to Prince Tay. The young prince had recovered fully, growing stronger each day. The mysterious illness that had nearly claimed his life was gone, banished by the magic of the shimmer fruit. June's life had changed completely. No longer did he spend his days alone among the plants of the royal gardens. Now he walked beside Prince Tay, teaching the boy about the natural wonders of their world and others. Each morning they spent 2 hours in the small garden they had created together on the East Terrace. In the afternoons, they studied plant specimens from across the empire in a special room set aside for their lessons. Prince Tay proved to be an eager student. He had a natural curiosity about living things and a gentle touch that plants seemed to respond to. Under June's guidance, he had already grown several difficult species that even experienced gardeners struggled with. The secret, June often told him, is to listen to the plants. They will tell you what they need if you pay attention. The prince took this advice seriously, spending long moments simply observing his plants, noticing how they turned toward light, how they reacted to water, how they grew in different soils. Today they were in the East Terrace garden, tending to a new arrival, a seedling from the shimmer tree. It was the first time a cutting from the ancient tree had taken root in living memory. The small plant was just 6 inches tall with 2 perfect leaves that glowed faintly in the shade. Will it grow fruit someday? Prince Tay asked as he carefully added water to the soil around the seedling. Perhaps, June replied, but it will take many years. The original shimmer tree is hundreds of years old. This little one has a long journey ahead. The prince nodded thoughtfully. I'll take care of it my whole life, he promised. And when I'm old, maybe it will have fruit of its own. June smiled at the boy's determination. Prince Tay had matured in the months since his illness. Facing death had changed him, making him more thoughtful and appreciative of life in all its forms. Their quiet moment was interrupted by the arrival of Commander Ho. The head of the royal guards approached with his usual brisk stride, stopping at a respectful distance from the prince. Your Highness, he said with a bow, your mother requests your presence in the throne room. There are visitors from the outer colonies. Prince Tay sighed softly. He enjoyed his royal duties much less than his time in the garden, but he was the crown prince and he had responsibilities that could not be ignored. I'll come right away, he said. June, will you finish watering the new plants? Of course, Your Highness, June replied with a small bow. The prince carefully placed his watering can on a stone bench, wiped his hands on a cloth, and followed Commander Ho into the palace. June watched them go, then turned back to the garden. The new plants did need water, but they could wait a little longer. First, he wanted to check on the shimmer tree seedling one more time. As he knelt beside the small plant, June heard footsteps behind him. Thinking it was one of the garden assistants, he did not turn around immediately. The seedling is doing well, a woman's voice said. Better than expected. June jumped to his feet and turned quickly. Queen Hana stood a few steps away, watching him with those cool, assessing eyes that missed nothing. She wore simpler clothes than usual, a dark blue dress with minimal decoration. Her hair was arranged in a less formal style, though still elegant. She looked almost like an ordinary woman. Not the ruler of hundreds of worlds, Your Majesty, June said, bowing deeply. I didn't know you were there. Clearly, the Queen replied, a hint of amusement in her voice. In the 6 months since June had begun teaching Prince Tay, he had seen the Queen only from a distance. She attended some of her son's formal lessons, but had never spoken directly to June since the night in the throne room. The garden looks well designed, she said, looking around at the neat beds of plants, the small trees in decorative pots, the climbing vines on trellises. My son has good taste, or perhaps that is your influence. Prince Tay chose everything himself, June said truthfully. I only advised on which plants would grow well together. The Queen moved closer to the shimmer tree seedling. She bent slightly to examine it, careful not to touch its delicate leaves. The head gardener said it was impossible to grow a new shimmer tree, she said, that all attempts had failed for generations. The timing was right, June explained. The parent tree produced a particularly strong seed last month, and Prince Tay has a gift for growing things. The Queen straightened and looked directly at June. You have taught him well. It wasn't quite a compliment, but coming from Queen Hana, it was close. June inclined his head in acknowledgement. He makes it easy, Your Majesty. He wants to learn. The Queen walked slowly around the small garden, examining the various plants. June followed at a respectful distance, ready to answer any questions about the garden's design or the care of its inhabitants. My son spends more time with you than with any of his other teachers, the Queen said, after a few minutes of silence. He talks about plants at dinner. He asks for books about botany from the Royal Library. He begs to visit other gardens when we travel. June wasn't sure how to respond to this. Was the Queen displeased? Did she think he was taking up too much of the prince's time? I can reduce our garden sessions if you wish, he offered carefully. Prince Tay has many subjects to study. The Queen shook her head slightly. That is not what I meant. She stopped walking and turned to face him again. My son was always a serious child. Too serious, perhaps. He felt the weight of his future responsibilities even before he understood what they were. She looked out over the garden, her eyes distant. Since his illness and his recovery, he has changed. He still takes his studies seriously, but he has found joy in this garden, in learning about living things, in creating something with his own hands. June was surprised by this personal observation from the usually reserved queen. He remained silent, sensing that she had more to say. The physicians say he is completely recovered, the queen continued. No trace of the illness remains. They call it a miracle. A small ironic smile touched her lips. They do not know about the shimmer fruit, of course. Only a few people know what really happened that night. I have told no one, Your Majesty, June assured her quickly. I know. The queen gave him an appraising look. You are discreet. Another quality I value. She moved to a stone bench and sat down, gesturing for June to sit as well. He did so, maintaining a respectful distance. Do you know why I did not have you executed, Custodian June? She asked abruptly. The question caught him off guard. I assumed it was because I helped Prince Tay, he said after a moment, and perhaps because he asked for mercy on my behalf. Those were factors, the queen acknowledged, but not the only ones. She looked at him directly. I watched you that night. From the moment you saw my son crying on his balcony, I watched your every move on the palace security monitors. June felt a chill run down his spine. She had known everything from the beginning. She had watched him steal the fruit, evade the guards, enter the prince's room. I saw your hesitation in the garden, the queen continued. I saw the moment you made your decision. I could have stopped you at any point, sent guards to arrest you before you reached my son. Why didn't you? June asked before he could stop himself. The queen did not seem offended by the question. I wanted to see what you would do, and why you would do it. She paused. The doctors had told me that morning that my son would not survive another week, that there was nothing more they could do. For the first time, June saw real emotion in the queen's eyes, the grief of a mother facing the loss of her child. I had heard the legends about the shimmer fruit, she said quietly. But legends are often just stories with no truth behind them. And even if they were true, royal protocol would not allow the fruit to be used except in specific ceremonial circumstances. She looked down at her hands, folded neatly in her lap. Protocol, rules, laws, sometimes they protect us, sometimes they trap us. She looked up again. As queen, I could not break those rules even to save my son. But you could. Understanding dawned on June. You let me take the fruit because you couldn't take it yourself. The queen's expression revealed nothing, but she did not deny it. I made sure certain doors were unlocked that night. I arranged for a gap in the guard rotation. I told Director Song to assist anyone who might be trying to help the prince. She stood up and walked to the edge of the terrace, looking out over the royal gardens below. As queen, I must uphold the laws of the empire. I cannot be seen to break them or bend them for personal reasons, even to save my own child. June remained seated, trying to process what the queen was telling him. She had used him to do what she could not do herself, yet she had also allowed him to live when the law demanded his death. In the throne room, he said slowly, you could have pardoned me completely. Why didn't you? The queen turned back to him. Because actions have consequences. Because the law must be seen to be enforced even if it is modified in certain cases. A hint of a smile crossed her face, and because I needed a reason to keep you close to my son. Towards the custodian stole one fruit for the crying heir. The queen watched, and whispered, execute him. 10 years passed since the night June stole the shimmer fruit. The seedling from the shimmer tree had grown into a young tree, now standing taller than Prince Tay himself. At 17, Tay was no longer the small, sickly boy June had first helped. He had grown into a tall, thoughtful young man, respected by the palace staff and loved by the people of the empire. June had aged as well, gray now, streaking his once dark hair. But his hands were still steady, his knowledge of plants still growing with each passing season. His position had evolved over the years. Though still officially the prince's botany teacher, he had become much more an advisor, a confidant, and something close to a friend. Despite the difference in their stations, today was an important day for both of them. Prince Tay was preparing to leave the palace on his first solo diplomatic mission. He would travel to the outer colonies representing the Queen in negotiations with local leaders. It was an important step in his training as the future emperor. June found the prince in their garden on the East Terrace, no longer a small collection of pots and seedlings, but a lush paradise that had won the Royal Garden Festival 3 years in a row, before they stopped entering to give others a chance to win. The garden had become famous throughout the Empire, with visitors from distant worlds requesting special permission to view it. Prince Tay stood beside the young shimmer tree, his hand resting gently on its trunk. He wore formal travel clothes, a deep blue suit with silver trim, the colors of the royal house. But his feet were bare, as they often were when he worked in the garden. "Are you saying goodbye to the tree?" June asked as he approached. Tay turned with a smile. "Yes, silly, I know. It's not as if it can hear me." "I wouldn't be so sure," June replied. "Plants are more aware than most people realize. They may not hear words, but they sense care and attention." The prince nodded, taking this idea seriously as he always did when June shared his knowledge. "I'll miss our garden while I'm away. The diplomatic ship won't have anything like this." "Perhaps not," June agreed. "But you'll see new plants on the outer colonies. Species I've only read about in books. Remember to take samples if the local authorities permit it." "I've already packed collection containers and preservation tools," Tay assured him. "And I'll take detailed notes just as you taught me." June felt a surge of pride. The boy had learned well over the years, not just about plants, but about patience, observation, and the interconnectedness of all living things. These lessons would serve him well as a diplomat and eventually as emperor. "I have something for you," June said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small wooden box polished to a soft shine. "A going-away gift." Prince Tay took the box with a curious expression. "You didn't need to give me anything." "Open it," June urged. The prince lifted the lid carefully. Inside, nestled on a bed of soft fabric, lay a small object that glowed with a familiar blue light, a seed from the shimmer tree. "It's the first viable seed the young tree has produced," June explained. "I found it yesterday and prepared it for planting. If you keep it in the special growth medium I've included, it should remain viable until you return." Tay looked at the seed with wonder. "We can plant it together when I come back," he said. "Start another tree." "That was my thought," June agreed. "Perhaps someday there will be shimmer trees throughout the royal gardens, not just one." The prince carefully closed the box and tucked it into an inside pocket of his jacket, close to his heart, just as June had carried the shimmer fruit 10 years ago. "Thank you," Tay said simply, "for this and for everything else." Before June could reply, Commander Ho appeared at the garden entrance. Though older now, with silver at his temples, the head of the royal guard still moved with the same precise efficiency. "Your Highness," he said with a bow, "the diplomatic ship is ready. Your mother awaits you in the main hall for a formal farewell." Prince Tay nodded. "I'll be there right away." He turned back to June. "Will you walk with me?" "Of course," June replied, though he was surprised by the request. The formal farewell would be attended by nobles and high officials, not a botany teacher who had once been a simple gardener. As they followed Commander Ho through the palace corridors, Tay spoke quietly to June. "Mother tells me that you were supposed to be executed," he said. June nearly missed a step in surprise. In 10 years, neither he nor the Queen had ever told Prince Tay the full story of that night. He knew that June had brought him the shimmer fruit when he was sick, but not that it had been stolen, not that the punishment should have been death. "When did she tell you this?" June asked carefully. "Last night," Tay replied. "She said it was time I knew the truth before I left on my first mission. She told me everything, how you stole the fruit, how she watched you on the security monitors, how she arranged for you to reach me." They walked in silence for a moment, the prince giving June time to absorb this revelation. "Are you angry?" June finally asked. "That we kept this from you?" Tay shook his head. "No, I understand why. I was too young to keep such a secret." He looked sideways at June. "But I'm not angry. How could I be? You risked your life to save mine." They had reached the main hall now. Through the large doors, June could see the gathered nobles and officials, all in formal attire. Queen Hana stood at the far end of the hall, regal as always in robes of state. Prince Tay paused before entering. "Mother also told me why she spared you," he said. "Not just because you saved me, but because she wanted me to learn from you." June nodded. She wanted you to learn about plants, he said, not mentioning the deeper lessons the Queen had spoken of that day in the garden. Not just plants, Tay said with a small smile. Courage, compassion, doing what's right even when it's difficult. He placed a hand on June's shoulder, a gesture of respect between equals that would have been unthinkable when their relationship began. I hope I've learned those lessons well. Better than well, June assured him. You will make a fine diplomat on this mission, and a fine emperor someday. Commander Ho cleared his throat discreetly, reminding them of the waiting audience. I should go, Tay said. Mother dislikes delays, especially on formal occasions. June nodded. Good luck on your journey, Your Highness. I'll care for the garden until you return. I know you will, Tay replied. Then, with a final smile, he straightened his shoulders and walked through the doors into the main hall, where he was greeted by polite applause from the assembled dignitaries. June remained outside, watching through the doorway as Prince Tay approached his mother. The Queen's face softened as her son bowed before her. She spoke words June couldn't hear, then placed a formal medallion around Tay's neck, the symbol of his authority as royal representative. As the ceremony continued, June felt a presence beside him. Director Song, now the Queen's chief of staff, had joined him in the doorway. You're not going in? She asked quietly. June shook his head. That's not my place. I'll say a proper goodbye when he boards the ship. Director Song gave him a considering look. After all these years, you still see yourself as just a gardener. I am a gardener, June said simply. That's what I know, what I'm good at. You're more than that, she replied. Much more. She gestured toward Prince Tay, who was now addressing the gathered officials with confident ease. You helped shape him into the person he is becoming. The Queen knows this. The Prince knows it too. Before June could respond, the ceremony concluded. The assembled nobles and officials formed an honor guard, creating a path from the Queen to the main doors. Prince Tay bowed once more to his mother, then walked between the rows of people, acknowledging them with nods and brief words. When he reached the doors, he stopped before June and Director Song. To the director, he gave a respectful nod. Then he turned to June. Walk with me to the landing pad, he said, not as a request but as a statement of fact, as if it had already been arranged. June glanced uncertainly at Director Song, who smiled and stepped aside. I'll inform the Queen that you're escorting the prince, she said. Together, June and Prince Tay left the main hall and walked through the palace to the landing pad where the diplomatic ship waited. Guards and officials followed at a respectful distance, giving them a measure of privacy. I've been thinking about something, Tay said as they walked. When I return from this mission, I want to start a new project. What kind of project? June asked, interested as always in the prince's ideas. The royal gardens are beautiful, Tay said, but they're only for the palace and its residents. I want to create public gardens throughout the capital city, places where ordinary people can enjoy rare plants and learn about them just as I have. June considered this idea. It would be a massive undertaking, he said. The cost, the planning, the ongoing maintenance. I know, Tay replied. That's why I want you to oversee it. No one understands gardens better than you do. June stopped walking, surprised by this suggestion. Me, but I'm just your botany teacher. I've never managed a project of that scale. You managed to save my life when everyone else failed, Tay said quietly. I think you can handle creating some public gardens. He smiled at June's stunned expression. Think about it while I'm away. We'll discuss the details when I return.